Hello, all my Spoiler Room fans out there, all you listeners out there. Thank you so much for your support, and welcome to another episode of the Spoiler Room. And tonight, go figure, we talked about the trilogy last week, and so this week we're talking about Mad Max Fury Road. And I have a packed house tonight in the Spoiler Room here with us. Let's go right down the list. Cole, how are you tonight, sir?
Magnificent. Thanks for having me, man.
Oh, glad to have you back, especially since you were on our trilogy discussion, so this should definitely be interesting.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, and I literally just stepped out of a 6:45 show for Fury Road for the third time, so...
I wonder what he thought.
You got one up on me, man. And then, of course, the diva of the Spoiler Room who I dragged to this film, it wasn't really that hard to drag her to the film.
No, not at all.
Hello, Dawn. How are you? Welcome back.
I am fabulous.
Awesome.
Nice to be here.
Fantastic. Glad you could make it. And the BFD is back. The one and only Glenn Bittner. Hello, sir. Way to be enthused here to talk about this film.
He saves his energy.
Well, he's got his pitcher of water. He's all good. And then back from the wasteland himself, the man who has been gone for so long playing ninja. It is Mr. One and Only, the Bowtie Man, Paul Salzar. Paul, welcome back to the room.
I'm just good to be back. I'm shiny and chrome right now.
Shiny and chrome, yes you are. And then we have here, of course, returning to us as well, Mr. Scott Davis. Hello, sir.
Hey, I'll need to do some inventory. I don't need another hero. I don't need to know the way home. All I want is what's beyond Thunderdome, and I'll be good tonight, okay?
Well, we'll definitely be talking about what went beyond Thunderdome tonight. And finally, last but not least...
Oh, come on, Mark! Can't we just get beyond Thunderdome?
I'm glad I set that up for you, sir.
Yeah, I never missed an opportunity.
And last, but definitely not least, the one and only, you can feel the energy in the room. It is Mr. Tiger Power himself, Tony Estrada. Welcome back to the room, Tony.
What's up, you guys? Got my haircut. I'm ready for this.
Tony's ready with this. He's got his shield and sword ready because we're going to talk about Fury Road. And if you've seen his review, you know he is an island. So tonight...
We love you, Tony. We love you.
We love you, Tony. So tonight, yes,
trust me, I love all you guys too. That's what makes this an awesome podcast.
Fury Road, the R-rated film that came out this past weekend, the fourth installment, but not a sequel, but could have been, but reboot, but not. It's its own entity. It is Fury Road, brought to us by the original creator of Mad Max, giving us the story once again of Mad Max, who ends up getting entangled, like he always does, in some kind of squabble in which we have, I always miss the name, Imperator Furiosa, who is the driver of the war rig of a clan, if you want, I guess you could say, ran by was it Immortan Joe, and she decides to go rogue and head across the wasteland with a number of Immortan Joe's lovely brides or wives, breeders actually, breeders. And so she decides to kidnap him.
Kim Deal was in there, Kelly Deal was in there, yes. Justine Wiggs, all the breeders were there.
All the breeders were there, and she tries to take them away from Immortan Joe and take them to her place where she was born, the supposed Greenland. And Mad Max ends up being taken along for the ride. Yes, folks, I can say this. I'll give my opinion right now because we always start these with just kind of initial thoughts. This film delivered even more than what the trailer promised for myself. It's the first film in a long time that has come out to the theater that I actually went back to the theater and saw twice on the big screen. Tells you what type of movie that is. Let's go with Glenn first, because I've caught him chewing. I did that on purpose.
Drinking like a boss.
Test. I liked it.
Yeah.
I liked it a lot. What were you saying? Ask me. What do you want to know?
I was gonna say, did it surprise you?
No,
No.
did not. Because I did something I don't usually do when I let my hopes get way up. I got my expectations way up. For a variety of reasons. One is that it's George Miller,
Mm-hmm.
and just George Miller, doing what he wanted to do, and Toe Cutter was back, and practical effects, baby.
Yes.
Those things right there made me go, yep. And I did see the trailers, and I saw some stills and stuff like that. So I'm like, I saw funky cars, I saw Max, and I love Tom Hardy. I think he's amazing, and
Mm-hmm.
everything that's well written. Christopher Nolan, Batman, not Batman.
Yeah.
So I had very high expectations, and it met them. I mean, I was expecting something to be, if not, I was actually expecting this to be better than Road Warrior, and I feel it was.
Okay.
Wow.
So
Nice.
I was expecting it to be a Road Warrior-esque movie with a budget, a big
Right.
budget, and that's what I got.
Yep.
And it
Yeah.
wasn't all, and because it was George Miller, I knew it wasn't going to be just flash in the pan glam, and just because you can do something with CG doesn't mean you should.
Right.
And they didn't. They did practical effects, and they used CG to enhance the practical effects as opposed to CG in place of effects. So.
Excellent. And Dawn, what about you? Your impression with the Mad Max film?
I also quite enjoyed it. I thought it was an excellent addition to the franchise. I was hugely impressed and pleased with the fact that it stayed Mad Max.
Mm-hmm.
It stayed the survivor, the broken survivor, with subtle nods to the movies that came before without being overt. I
Mhm.
liked the strength of the characters were
Sure.
were just excellent, and I love the fact that they really didn't do any romance crap.
We'll definitely be talking about the characters, because the three main ones especially, but some of the other ones as well tonight. But yes, definitely did not miss the romance crap. Cole, you've seen it 3 times. I can kind of guess what your impression of this film was.
Yeah, man, I'm a massive fan, and I set myself up because I posted all this stuff before it came out about it. So if I didn't like it, I was gonna
Yeah.
look like a real asshole. You know? And I really I'm serious. And I kind of thought at the worst, or even at the best, but I kind of thought more or less, and this was idiotic of me, that it was gonna be like a kind of an update of the Road Warrior,
Mm-hmm.
because that was the most successful one. That's kind of the standard. And I kind of thought, oh, okay, especially when I heard reboot. I read so little about the movie just to keep the spoilers away.
Mm-hmm.
But when I heard it wasn't tied into any of them, that it was actually a reboot, I started to think, okay, it'll probably be more of a Road Warrior thing. And that was just a personal take on it. So, and I don't know why I thought that. This is so not that. This is a reboot. And for the first time, you actually go into Max's head a little bit.
Yes.
And not through
Mhm.
dialogue. They don't write. I mean, he doesn't have. In fact, he probably has less lines than he did in the Road Warrior. I didn't
Oh yeah.
count him, but you find out so much more about him. The opening scene before the titles even roll is so thrilling. I mean, how many times can you tell the same story through narration, but it felt fresh? Maybe it was just Tom Hardy's delivery, as Glenn said, he's amazing. But the way they set up, the apocalypse and the world you're living in felt, not totally original, but, it's a spoonful of sugar for sure, man. And this is just a great film. I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to. and I don't want to give away too much up front, but
Yep.
you know, there's this you have this instinct to be like it's not my favorite film of all time.
Sure.
Because
Sure.
you know,
you almost don't want to admit it just because.
yeah, but it might be. It
Sure.
might be my favorite film. You know.
Nice. And
Yeah.
Paul, how about you, sir? Impressions? Were you surprised when you came out of it?
I was not surprised. I was thoroughly pleased because I really did want the Road Warrior type movie. I didn't really like Beyond Thunderdome. I really didn't. And I like to see more car battles, exciting stunts, wasteland scenes, and this movie actually delivered that. It also delivered like all those twists and complications that I kind of like to see in a Mad Max film, and it had the perfect ending for a Mad Max film. So we'll talk about that later.
Yes, definitely. And Scott, how about you, sir? Your impression after you get out of the theater?
Well, you'd asked, you were asking, like,
Yep. Were you
like
surprised?
Glenn, you were asking, like, are you surprised? I was surprised. Now, yeah, and I'm so glad we didn't get Phantom Menace on this one. Oh, man. It could have happened so easily. Because, and I was, like, just writing this review. I wrote, one of my typical long, rambling reviews today of it. And I was talking about how, diehard fans of this movie were waiting for 30 years, It would be almost understandable if those expectations could not be met. And so I was, so I was like, going on, like, was this the film that people have been that fans have been waiting 30 years for? I said no, it wasn't. It was actually so much more than that.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it twice as well, and I think what I said was. Tony, is that you? Was that
I'm
you,
sorry
buddy?
about that, Scott. I'm sorry about that.
No, it's like you're like, oh, it's getting warm in here. Anyway, no, I'm sorry, man. It's no, I think I said in my review that in terms of like spectacle, thematic material, character development, this is the for the entire world, not just the fans. The action film we didn't realize we needed so badly.
Yeah.
Think about it. Think about everything you saw on the screen. Think about how it made you feel.
Yeah.
It like actually filled a part that I had forgot we had lost over the years. It was that good. Where I was like, geez, and I saw it again to make sure. I think I really liked that movie a lot. And I watched it again thinking, okay, and usually on the second viewing, a lot of things kind of simmer out and the flaws kind of stand out more. And I'm like, no, I like it even more.
Yeah, no, my second viewing, I think I didn't enjoy it quite as much.
Really?
No, I'm
Lies.
joking. Dawn was with me. She was chuckling as I rocked back in my chair in glee. So.
Yes.
I think I did read a status update that Dawn on Facebook where you said that more fun than watching the movie even was seeing Mark's reaction. I think you said.
Yes. Yes.
Feel free to share that with
pretty
us.
much what giddy like a schoolgirl, rocking, bouncing. Mm-hmm.
Aww.
Yeah. I'm passionate about film. What can I say? And last but not least, Tony, your impression with the film. I want to hear this.
Well, when I went into this movie, a lot of people were hyped up. Me, I'm kind of in the, this doesn't look too bad. Like, I like how they marketed the movie. Like, the trailers I thought were brilliant. It didn't show much, but it was just the movie itself that was all like, this looks kind of okay to me. So, but I did want to go into this movie hoping it wouldn't be too bad. It would surprise me. And you know what? I gotta say, the movie wasn't that bad. It was horrible, in my opinion.
Okay.
I said this in my movie review. I tried to like this movie. I tried to get invested in this world, but It was just so hard when everything was just action, 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 little story, then action and more action. And trust me, the action, that's one of my positives. It is well filmed. The cinematography, gorgeous. The performances from Tom Hardy, Charlize Theron, Nicholas Hoult, they're all great. The thing that just really bugged me about this movie was just that the action, some of the shots were like move very rapidly, like boom, and another shot, boom, rapid, boom, boom. And then the editing too, I thought it got really choppy, and I felt like the movie lacked exploring its characters. Like, they tried to develop Charlize Theron a couple of times, but I never got fully invested in her character. And the same goes to Tom Hardy as Mad Max, and the same goes to Nicholas Hoult as Nux. So as much as I wanted to get into this movie, I just couldn't because the storyline did not make much sense to me. I thought it was poorly edited, and I really hated how it was executed. My head just hurt by the time the movie ended. I'm sorry, you guys.
You know what? No, I'm going to give you a little I'm going to give you a little backup on this here, on Tony. First of all, I can give you two actually. It's like one is the first podcast I ever did was a show called Film Geek Central. I did it with my old friend Austin Kennedy. Absolutely as big of a movie nut as I am, and he hated it too. And he hated it for the exact same reason. He said he couldn't follow what was going on. It was too much action, not enough character, and it made his head hurt the way it was shot.
So he pretty much had the same opinion that I had with the movie. Pretty much.
And I will also say that the second time I saw this movie, I took some friends of mine. Now, these friends, they're not super young, but they're younger. I'd say that they technically just barely millennials, I'd say. You know, early 80s birthday and stuff like that. They hated it too. I've
had friends who like have messaged me and been like, "Are you seriously recommending this to me?"
Yeah, they couldn't.
So,
they couldn't figure out
that just goes to show you it might be kind of a cult thing, even as big as it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely not for everybody, man.
Yeah, and I can completely see that perspective, Tony. And I posted on the forum, and I made a generalization. I shouldn't, because there are younger, fans, cult fans out there that are really, truly, they like the something different, and this type of film they really enjoyed. But I have seen a lot of younger fans having that same complaints that you had about the film, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, man.
Don't feel bad at all, because part of the thing with this film is that if you're not used to this type of film or have not watched many of these films, I can definitely see that perspective. But especially after marathoning the first three films, going into this one, it really felt like we were talking about it with Dawn. Dawn and I were afterwards, and you guys can chime in. With this film, I can see where a number of movie viewers may get lost because you aren't really given a lot of explanation. You are just dropped into a window into this world. And stuff is happening.
Yep.
My younger friends there, and I love them dearly. It was so hard not to strangle them, but I love. They're good
no
people.
Strangling Tony.
They're good. No, Tony's too cool. I wanted to strangle them, but my friends. But but they're awesome people otherwise. Is that they said I didn't get it. Why were people dressed so funny? What's wrong with the world? And they didn't get it. And I said there were the gasoline wars, the water world, the wars, the nuclear war. He says, when did they say that? I said, right in the beginning. Like, what? Those 30 seconds? He's like, so yeah. It dropped him in too quick, and they had. I'm not going to make any blanket things about who's seen what. My friends I know had not seen any of the others, and so they just couldn't get into it,
Yeah. Well,
I still want to strangle them, but I mean, still.
What were you going to say, Glenn?
Hey, let me just add, Tony.
Go ahead, man.
Completely wrong. You should burn in hell. I can never watch your reviews again. I'm kidding, man. I'm kidding.
Someone had to play.
No problem. No problem.
No, I can see that, Tony, and I'm trying not to sound like a get off my lawn moment, but George Miller is a guy who hadn't directed a film in quite some time. He did do the original trilogy, and he basically hijacked a budget and made his own film. He did not make a modern action film. This action film could easily, I think, have fit in the late 80s. I mean, it looks fantastic. But this film definitely could feel, down to the 3D effects. Folks, Don and I chuckled about it. He used the 3D effects in this film like it was the 80s again.
I noticed that, even though I didn't see it in 3D, I noticed that he was doing.
Who here saw it in 3D? Glenn, did you see it in 3D?
No, I don't watch 3D.
My event screening was in 3D. That's something I will give the film, is that the 3D actually does pop, because it's the reason why I really don't even see 3D unless my event screenings I go to are in 3D, really. But as far as 3Ds go, I will say that this is probably the best film in terms of 3D, because some of the films I see in 3D lately, it's all like, nothing pops. Like,
this one definitely pops.
But I will give Mad Max Fury Road this. At least the 3D works, like, with the guitarist, that guitarist that has a flamethrower coming out of his guitar, like the way the 3D popped in that looked freaking great, you guys. And then when the movie title popped up in the beginning, I mean, I was all like, holy crap, this is great 3D right here.
Cole, did you see it in 3D? Cole?
Oh, I'm sorry, man.
What?
I apologize. I have not. I have an appointment Thursday morning to see it in 3D. It's going to be literally my first IMAX experience.
Oh, wow.
Nice. We're going to get the early show and drive down there and see it. I'll tell you, though, it almost makes me hesitate because the movie looks so good in 2D. I mean,
it does.
What a gritty experience. There's a couple of glossy CG shots, but really not many aside from the storm sequence. It's all pretty right down in the dirt, you know. But no, I haven't seen it in 3D yet. No.
And Paul, you said you didn't, right?
I did not. No.
Okay, but Don and I did, and the first thing that came out of there was, he's an 80s director, and he used 3D like 80s directors used 3D. Just like you mentioned, Tony, that title popping out of the screen on flames, it was just like that. And the scene with the guitar flying towards...
God.
As cheesy as that might have seemed, if you watched any 80s 3D film, they did that throughout those films. And so when he did that, I'm like... wow, that's just made me feel totally like I was back in the 80s.
You know, the reason I don't watch 3D is because my eyes don't process it.
Sure.
My eyes haven't been able to process that since I was about like 9 or 10 years old because of various surgeries and shit that I've had over the years. Before that, I saw a few things in 3D. You know, I did an episode on Space Hunter on my Movieocrity show and stuff. And I gotta tell you, yeah, when the title came up and the electric guitar coming out of the screen with the speakers and stuff, I thought, man, if I don't really miss 3D that much, but I said, man, you know what? I'll bet you this was like, oh, so that was like what it would have been like if Metal Storm had $100 million budget. You know? That would have been awesome.
It was like Treasure of the Four Crowns with the popcorn popper the handle comes straight down and points directly at the audience and flies at you. Yeah, it just was handled so well. So I want to talk about our characters here, some of them, because we do have a wide variety of them. And actually, I was reading an article today. Apparently, George Miller came up with just a little backstory with every type of character and every character in the film before they did the movie. So it tells you what type of imagination he has. But let's start off with the main character, Max. Paul, your impressions of Max. I think, what did you think of Hardy in this role?
I thought it was interesting. It felt like they showed us the continuation of the Max character. I mean, you got Mel Gibson, who played him extremely well, but this looked like he Like he spent more time in the wasteland, and it seemed he seemed a little bit more crazy.
He's gone even more crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really thought that was a really nice touch, and this movie really does do a good job of adding those nice little nuances, and like someone had already stated, you really dig more into his mindset with the things that he's starting to see. He's starting to see things about his past coming back, and it actually, it even affects the way he does things in the movie. It pops up at him, and he just and I thought that was just a really nice touch to the character, especially when you wanted to see. I really truly want to see this not as a reboot, but as a continuation of the story. So.
Well, I think we'll take a minute. Would everyone agree? The way they shot this film, it could be a standalone, but at the same time, you could feel like it was part of the other three films, couldn't you? It had that feel of almost both.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Both, I'd say. I called, and of course I just pulled this right out of my butt, but I called it a soft reboot.
Uh-huh.
In other words, it was they were rebooting it, but it wasn't like Amazing Spider-Man where you got the original all over again. It actually referenced stuff from all of the different movies subtly, but I thought that they of course changed things about like what happened to his wife and kid. That was different, and they I think they changed a lot about the actual Max character, which was a ballsy move, if you ask me.
Well, but they did it. I think they did it a little subtly with it, though, because you could take his hallucination or how he was haunted by these images as real or having been affected over the years. So they're an amalgamation of some things. So
yes.
I mean, you could take it as they've changed it and his family got killed by something else, by cars over, or you could take it as he's gone so mad that images are overlapping on themselves in his psychosis.
He could see that. It does also age and switch genders for his kid, though.
Well, yeah, that's true.
But no, I totally see that. Like, for instance, like when he's running down in the beginning, he's running down that hall and he sees his wife and he sees his daughter. He also sees like looks like an old Aboriginal man at one point. I'm like, whoa, okay, that was odd.
But the kid might not necessarily be his daughter either. Glenn, your impression with the Max character and his psychosis, do you think they rewrote him, or do you think they were trying to kind of bridging that gap between?
I think it's a little of both.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something that could have easily been touched on in the previous movies. I mean, the traumas that he went through with his partner and then his wife and his kid and all that stuff, and then just his experiences in the other films. I mean, he always ends up being the loner, even when he's the hero.
Yeah.
It's never in this movie is it the he's not the shining knight that gets the girl in the end and rides away in the sunset with the princess. He doesn't get that. He's a tragic character in a lot of ways, and I think this is something that could have easily been in the other movies. It wasn't, and I think it was building upon that with maybe a little rewrite because we don't get real clear information like where some of these images come from.
Right.
Some of the people in the images. So, but I think it fits with the character. It fits with his background of the fact that he was a cop.
Right.
And the whole it's his job was is to protect people. That's what it was. But that's not the easiest job in that world now. So.
Yeah. And Tony, is that the part that maybe didn't agree with you too much? Was kind of those hallucinations without any real explanation?
Yeah, the hallucinations thing is one of those what the F moments because they only go through it like a few times during the movie, and it's not like they had to really explain anything, but it's something I wish the movie kind of went into detail to, and that's where I couldn't really. I cared about Tom Hardy's character. I liked him as Mad Max, but I couldn't really get get behind his background like what they did with Mel Gibson's Mad Max, because of course they really explored his backstory and the tragedy of him losing his wife and his infant son. But here I felt like they really could have gone at least in a little more details, at least give me enough to learn about something if this girl is really his daughter, because I couldn't really tell if the girl was his daughter or just someone else from his past. So that was one of those things that just kind of had me lost when I was watching the movie.
Sure. And Dawn, what about you and Mad Max and how they wrote him?
I thought it was pretty clear in certain scenes that she was calling him Dad.
Yeah.
The little girl. It was pretty clear that she was calling him Dad. And I thought it was pretty clear that the visions were representations of people, real or imagined, that he could not save. Who they were, I didn't feel it necessarily mattered who they were, just that he carried the guilt of every person that he felt he failed. We all carry those ghosts with us. So I felt that who they were didn't matter so much as what they represented, which was his guilt, his inner demons, his failure. And that's really what drove him mad, and that's really what, and the quote, "Hope is a mistake," because every time he allowed himself to hope, or presumably every time he allowed himself to hope, he failed, and therefore he didn't want to connect anymore. And it was all part of the madness and the loss and the tragedy of Max.
And I would add to that, I don't think it's just that he can't connect. I think that he doesn't feel he deserves to connect.
Absolutely.
Because he has failed so many people that he's not worthy of anything more than what he is.
Correct. Yes.
And anyone else want to add in on the Max character, how he was written?
Just to go add on to what I was saying was that that Tom Hardy's because they had this whole thing where he's got like this really severe like PTSD, and about like and guilt and all that other stuff. And Dawn, I think your comments are just fantastic on that. And it's I think that they also wrote him, and this is another way where you could look at it either as a continuation or as just dropping you in the middle, because his portrayal of the character, because of this, is different. It's not just that he's got these voices and stuff. He's also a lot more soft-spoken. He's not as outwardly intimidating. He's kind of twitchy in a lot of spots.
He's a little skittish. He's a bit skittish in some things, which you can imagine being out there for so long.
Yeah, so he's so it's a different way, and I think that if another director was handling this movie, that there would be a lot of people that were upset by this. But I think that George Miller taking this and giving this kind of alternate way to look at the character was really something. I think that's really interesting.
Well, you could tell George Miller is familiar with the character, obviously, since he created him and wrote him, and that definitely comes across on screen, to be sure. Cole, what about you, Mad Max's character? One thing I wanted to get your opinion on, since you've seen it 3 times now.
Yeah, man.
Wouldn't you say that not only do we get a character arc with him a little bit, we get a character arc with his psychosis. It goes from driving him mad to, and again, this is something Dawn and I touched after we watched it. It goes from driving him mad to actually helping him and foreshadowing what's going to happen.
Leading him in the right direction, for sure. Yeah, man. Or foreshadowing? I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
No, that's both. The how it developed and how it went from being kind of harmful to helpful, and also giving him a little foreshadowing of what was going to happen, like the whole arrow to the head.
The arrow to the head, yes. Again, amazing. And I'm gonna, I have to address the complaint. Well, 2 complaints: that there's no characterization and that there's no story. I think this thing is overflowing with story. And I'm speaking to everybody who sent me these private messages. If they are listening, I hope they are. This film is overflowing with story. And I just want to touch, because everybody else has touched on what I would rant and rave about, which is Tom Hardy is a genius. Watch The Drop and then Locke as a double feature if you've never seen a Tom Hardy movie, and you'll understand what this man can do, really, with very little.
And Bronson.
But there is a method there is a method of developing a character that does not revolve around dialogue. I mean, for instance, do we see that Charlize Theron has no arm right away? Not necessarily. You know, they don't I mean, if you're paying attention, yeah, you can grab that it's a robotic. But really, the notion that she's just a straight-up amputee comes in the scene where, well, in the first shot, there's slight sexual innuendo. In the second shot that they show these girls, you realize that they're sex slaves, and in the next shot, they're kicking ass. But during those shots, you see that she's a straight-up amputee. And what that is, my friends, is character development. It's not done through dialogue, and it's not necessarily done through ordinary means, but that doesn't necessarily signify a lack of script.
No,
that signifies that this is the writer and director of the goddamn project, and he knows long before he goes in what he's gonna do, you know. And that's just a different style. It doesn't make it that doesn't make it simplistic or bad. It just it's a different style. You don't need everything in dialogue. I'm sorry, I'm ranting.
No.
One of the things I was saying in my review is that I said, you know, there's so much action in this movie. It's basically just like 3 huge action sequences with some, you know, cushion in between. And so I said there shouldn't be any room for any development of any kind except for the setup for the next sequence. But in fact, I felt they created an amazing world and wonderful characters, and it was one of those things. It's when I said, like, this is the one we didn't think we couldn't think we could happen. It's more than what we expected. It's the film we needed, because it shows us that, oh, you can have a film that's like pretty much solid action, and it still has all of this backstory, character development, and everything, but it's just trickier because you actually have to weave it into the story itself and not pause for it. And he doesn't, and it works great, I thought.
It's because of the direction, and I think.
The direction and the script and everything. Yeah,
it's what Cole just said, and I think we all kind of agree with this. In a modern, and this is just me speculating, talking out of my rear, but if this was directed a modern way, when we get to see Charlize Theron's character, you would have had a direct shot on the arm. You would have had a specific shot specifically on her arm as she was walking up to go, hey, look, she's got a robotic arm.
Yeah.
And then we would have had a specific close-up shot of her removing the arm and showing that she's an amputee. And then we would have... And this is the thing that I totally agree with you on that, Scott, and I'd love to get your guys' thought. This film, I think, our modern action films up to this point, especially within the last number of years, have handicapped our audience, not to them, they're fantastic viewers, but by showing and really laying everything out and giving explanation to everything. When you get a film like this, I can see where there are reactions like that, because most action films in the last, especially, I'd say 5 or 10 years, give us explanation, and they don't let the audience think. And I would say that this film, even with the 3 action sequences, when you don't have that going on, would you guys say that this film actually makes the audience think, going, oh, this is how things are?
Yeah, definitely.
The world building, am I off? The world building is part on screen and part inside the viewer's imagination.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so freaking awesome, man. And why I think it's better than the original 3 is it almost... Really, you have got to use your brain to get into this. If you're not really paying attention and thinking, you might not feel the heat for sure.
Sure.
You know?
What would you say, Paul? Would you say that he left it kind of up to the audience to try to figure out some of this stuff?
Definitely. But I when I watched it, I wasn't really thinking about it though. That's the weird thing. That's why I'm like thinking now about all the things that I should have been thinking about it. It was just to me, it was just like I was enjoying myself watching the film, and those little things are what the nice little touches, the steering wheels, the speaker car with the guitarist in front.
Yes,
It's those little things that just added to the world, and I think in the background, I think my subconscious put the world together. So I wasn't thinking, but I was putting together everything, you know.
Sure. And Tony, you said you would have liked to see some more explanation. What did you think about the world that he built, though? Even though you didn't get a full explanation about the world, what about visually entertaining or whatnot, the world that he paints? What did you think about that?
Well, visually, I did like the world that he created, and it's not like I need a whole lot of explanation. I just wish, to me, I just wish there were things in this movie he could have made a little bit more clearer. He didn't have to go like all in depth into it, but I would say like at least in some spots try to make the little things more clear. But visually, I did like the world he created, and despite how I do feel about this movie, I respect what he did have to go through to create this world. I respect that they created all of these crazy vehicles, and that pretty much all the movie just with very minimal. It was all practical effects. It was very minimal CGI. So I think visually he did create the world very well. He did a very splendid job creating it.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I think we're all in agreement with that. That it definitely felt like a Mad Max world amped up, but it was still Mad Max. Now let's talk about Furiosa, because we've mentioned her and her robotic arm and that. Dawn, your impression of how they handled Charlize Theron's character, or how Charlize Theron handled her character, just that character in general. What did you think, considering the action female stars we've had in the past?
I thought she did a really great job. She did pretty much the job I expected from her. She has a good history of being an action star, even in movies that I haven't liked. So she has a good background for it. She's strong. She has a very strong camera presence. Excellent timing.
What about her character itself, the way it was written? Did you feel at all that they wrote her too manly, or were they able to create a strong female character without her losing that she's female?
Male, female, it really didn't matter. She was a person.
Right.
I didn't feel that she gained or lost anything. She was a person trying to do what she believed was the right thing. In a world that is hard, and she was a survivor. Even the brides, the breeders, whatever, they were forced to have the appearance of femininity, but they too were simply survivors. And I didn't really, aside from how they were dressed, I didn't really see a whole lot of difference between them. They were all badass and willing and able to do whatever it took. I believe I read somewhere that the author of the Vagina Monologues, or somebody connected with the Vagina Monologues, was brought on board to help make sure that, or to help consult with those characters, and I felt that was very successful.
It's kind of weird hearing that, but yeah, she did. They had to consult the person who I think wrote the Vagina Monologues come on as a consultant for the female characters, which you can kind of tell. Paul, what
the other? Just one more thing I really want to add. Aside from them, something I liked is the male characters didn't treat them any different from the other male characters. It was they were all just people. They were all just human-ish people.
Yeah.
There was no softness or pulling punches.
Yeah, the only one who treats them differently, of course, is Immortan Joe, but he treats everybody as just people who have a function and that are defined by that function. That's how he treats everybody. So.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Paul, what about you? Did you think the female characters were handled very well? I mean, I got worried a little bit, like Dawn mentioned, of how that they had kind of what I call the beauty shot in there, the one and only one, where they had the breeders out there, but then as the movie goes along, we find out they're not your trope.
Yep. Definitely would do that. I just to kind of add a little funny anecdote. I kept thinking of the scene from Zoolander when they were doing that water scene. I did. I'm sorry.
Oh,
but
the gasoline one.
The gasoline thing, where and I was expecting them because I was like, well, I guess that's water. That is really water. But and about Furiosa, I like the fact that they kept her hair short because to me in that world the short hair people, that's kind of why I cut my hair today.
You wanted to be Furiosa, all right?
Because it had some practicality to it, and I love the fact that it seemed like you have this beautiful actress who again did a wonderful job with the role, but from the physicality part of it, you had this person and she didn't have to look soft. She played a role, and it was well done, and she was practical, and she had a purpose, and that's what I enjoyed about her character most of all.
She wasn't even the damsel in distress, and that's what I liked about the Breeders was they
weren't either.
They really weren't either.
Yeah.
Tony, what do you think about Furiosa's character, at least, as far as what we've seen from other action films for female roles and her role, the way it was written, as well as the Breeders?
Are the Breeders the ones that she tagged along with?
Yeah, the ones in the white.
The white gowns. Oh, okay.
The white gowns that she kidnapped.
And the chastity belts that they took off.
The chastity belts, the vicious chastity belts they had. How did you think, at least compared to what we've seen in other action films, how they were handled?
Furiosa, even though to me, I think she is the most developed. Even though to me, it only felt like there were a couple of scenes where they tried to focus on her, like that one moment where she kind of sees what happened to her homeland. I mean, Charlize Theron. I mean. She really did nail her part as Furiosa. I thought she did bring what she could to the character for what the script did give her. She was believable enough in her role. I cared about her despite she could have had more development, but I was still able to get behind enough. So I thought how George Miller handled her character, I thought she was a pretty strong female character. Because in some of these movies, the females are just look like, oh, you're a female, you can't do this. But it's like what some of you have said in this movie. She does show that no one should mess around with someone like Furiosa.
No.
So I, in terms of Furiosa, in terms of her as a female character, I thought she was handled well. But the Breeders, oh my gosh, I thought. The acting on the Breeders was just god-awful. I thought the actresses did terrible, and I know I'm sounding harsh there, but I just felt like they didn't do a good job. It just kind of felt like they were sitting there the whole time going...
Well, aren't most of them models to begin with?
Yeah, Rosie Huntington, and the funny thing is that in my movie review, I said they all look like a bunch of fucking models, and someone commented on my review going, that's because one of them in reality is a model.
Zoe
Kravitz. I didn't care about the bellowers, the wives, I'll call them the wives. I didn't really think they served any purpose. Like, yeah, here and there they kind of gave Furiosa the tools that she needed to go on fighting, but to me, honestly, they weren't strong. I thought they had no personalities to them whatsoever. They just weren't interesting to me at all. So I really did not care for the wives at all, honestly.
Well, one thing I will say, and Glenn, I wanted to get your thought with that, though, with the wives and Furiosa, the way they wrote them, though, we really don't. They are all pretty useful, and they all get their hands dirty, even though we don't get a whole lot of a setup with them. But wouldn't you say that George Miller played off the trope a little bit with the one beauty shot, but then you realize everything is explained of why the girls are dressed like that and why they might not be so, have a personality? Do you think they explain that fairly well with that? To set that up so it's not just they're in there for good looks?
No, I think they set it up. I think they set it up quite well. I mean, these are. I mean, first of all, figure their only socialization for the most part is with each other.
Right.
They're not out mingling with the crowds. There's no school they're going to. School's been out for a while now in the wasteland. So I think the purpose of them is that, I mean, these were obviously women who were chosen for their purpose because of their looks.
Mm-hmm.
So, not saying that they don't have personalities, but that's not why they were picked for what they were picked for.
Right.
And I've heard. I was just reading some stuff where people were complaining that these women wouldn't have been chosen as breeders because they're too thin and willowy, and they. But, I don't think that your wasteland warlord is thinking about that specifically when he's looking to figure out what women he's going to own.
But also too, though, it was important that they could bring to term a child that was healthy, because you look at all the past ones and they were all kind of misshapen, and I think those are people that didn't make it through,
Yeah,
certainly didn't.
I think these people. I think a big part is they were chosen for their looks.
Mm-hmm.
Partly because it's also people will. Some people will associate someone attractive is going to breed pretty healthy babies,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't necessarily true, but
But
again,
the mentality, yeah.
mentality. So I think the characters were fine. I think that they played the roles they were selected to play.
Do you think Furiosa threatened the masculinity of Mad Max? I can't even say that with a straight face. I really can't say that with a straight face.
Wow.
Well, Furiosa, though.
That's the complaint about of all the douchebags, isn't it?
Yes,
Yes.
I love the
Okay.
one thing where one of the biggest things they got mad about is that she barks orders at Max. No one barks orders at Mad Max. I'm like,
Have you watched the movies?
except for, I'm like, Tina Turner barks orders at him. Master Blaster barks orders at him. His boss in the first movie, his partner in the first movie, lots
The
of
dude
people
with the
in Road
crossbow.
Warrior. He gets barked at a lot.
The dude,
Yeah.
the dude who played Jared Sin.
So I'm like, he gets barked at all the time, and she doesn't really bark orders at him all that much. And the thing is he takes initiative a lot more on doing things than she does. I think she has her plan of what she's going to do. She's going to drive these folks out there, and she's going to get to the Greenland and be safe. But aside from driving the rig, there isn't a lot of the things that she's possibly thought of that Max takes care of at times. So I think they work well as a team. Because she brings Max a bit out of his shell, and because he's kind of a little trembly guy for a bit and scared of her in a way, even though when he's got the drop on her. But I think that they work well as a team because she's strong, but she still has some vulnerability to her because there's when she reminisces a bit about the Greenland and where she came from, that little bit, and the fact that she cares about these women.
Mm-hmm.
Shows that she has emotion. She's not just this wrecked person, and I think that helps Max a bit because he's not the only person who's broken.
Yeah.
And I think her character kind of helps him see that there's other people that are just as damaged as he is, if not more. But you still, and she's kind of I think when she barks at him, it's kind of we fucking need you right now. And I think that kind of snaps him out a bit, where he gets back more into that. That's right, I help people, and he still has the ghost of his past. But I think they make a great team together. I think they complement each other really well.
Yeah, I would definitely say, and he sees her as almost like another soldier. Wouldn't you say, Cole, that his view of her isn't exactly, oh, she's a woman and she's tough. It's just like, oh, you're a tough person that tried to beat the snot out of me, and you know what? That just ticked me off.
Yeah, man. I don't see. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's dead on. I mean, it's like I was talking about in that sequence earlier, which you called the beauty shot. Thank you. That's a good reference, because if someone was to ask me, why do you like this movie, I would point to that whole sequence, like I said, which starts with the beauty shot, back to Max, watching them, back to the chastity belt being cut off, back to Max, and back to Charlize Theron. It's revealed that she's an amputee, that she's missing an arm. That whole sequence, you're getting massive information. But what it's also doing immediately and directly is eschewing the notion that these are going to be sex symbols.
Yeah.
And if you continue to see them as sex symbols, then I think the movie might have left you in the dust in that scene. The water that these women are splashing off of themselves, and that's one shot, if I remember correctly, turns into a need for life as soon as Max sees it. The narrative, makes you focus. No, this isn't sexy. This guy needs water.
He doesn't care what they look like.
Well, it was just such a. I think it was the surrealism of the shot is that he's just dragged this guy that's attached to him through a transfusion thing like half a mile. He's like comes around there. He thinks he's gonna see somebody that he has to hijack, and he sees. Oh my God! It's Victoria's Secret. It's like it's one of the moments of few moments of levity, and it lasts for just a second, and where it takes him a minute to like orient himself, and then all of a sudden, water.
Water.
Yeah,
I could just imagine the commercial. Hey boys, you want to join the post-apocalyptic? The post-apocalyptic world? Well, come buy Victoria's Secret's bras and panties.
It'll whip you with chains.
We love water.
The thing about those characters is fantastic. It is true they're all survivors. I think Furiosa is such a fantastic character, and I actually will go farther than some of you guys who are saying they make a good team. No, I think Max comes close to being a supporting character in the movie at certain points. I'm totally fine with that because I think it's how he was written this time, and I think it's how she was written. I didn't see her so much as a strong woman. I thought she was a strong character. She was an amazing character. In fact, I know that George Miller wants to do more of these. Good news, good news. Honestly, if he said for the next one, he says, you know what, guys, I changed my mind. I think the next one I'm just going to make about Furiosa. I'd be cool with that, honestly, because I liked her character so much. And it's... you were bringing it up before, and I think, to give it a little context for people who are listening to this for the first time, that there is a group of morons out there that call themselves men's rights activists. And these people are the biggest fucking waste of skin. I swear. And these are guys that are viewing any progress to give equal representation to women as like a threat against them, which is a wrong thing to do because that's exactly how the white people in South Africa behaved during apartheid. It's exactly how people behave when women got the right to vote in this country. Guys, chill out. You're guys and you're living in America. Shut the fuck up.
Preach, preach.
It's not a threat. Not a threat at all. It's equality. It's better for all of us.
Well, it makes for a better movie because Mad Max is supposedly his name's in the title, so he's supposedly the hero. And at every turn, everybody's defined.
Oh yeah, he gets outvoted several times. He
shows up, grabs the water, and the minute he starts grabbing the water, he gets tackled and get the crap beat out of him. Just when he thinks he's got the upper hand, one of the wives stands up to him and is defiant and starts walking towards the truck even after he shoots at her. It's like,
yeah, he doesn't. That's the thing. He doesn't come off as that as the outwardly intimidating person he did in Road Warrior. If that's what you want, then watch that movie again. This is a different way of looking at it. You can either look at it as a different look at the character or what the character is transformed into, depending on how you look at things. But it's just I think it was a really interesting way to write the characters.
Well, I just love it too because it's a breakaway from the standard action type of thing that we've gotten up until now. I mean, even it's usually written that's part of the character that they write to where she uses some of her sexuality to her advantage to distract the guys. But in this one, we have none of that here. No, I mean these ladies, most of them, I mean, each of the breeders kind of felt like a representation of a different aspect. You had the one who wanted to go back because she's like, oh, he'll take us back, he'll forgive us. And then you have the strong motherly one who's the most pregnant, who also is the first one to sacrifice herself.
Yeah.
Oh, that was rough.
Well, I love the shot of one of my favorite shots is of Immortan Joe taking a aim at Furiosa through the window, and then, at Max through the window, and then the one female who's most pregnant just opens the door and puts herself right in the path.
Fantastic. Yeah, it was that thing, and that's
But
when he
then, but if you notice, then Immortan Joe had one of his war boys threw themselves in front of him when he got shot.
Yeah.
Which leads me to the Immortan Joe character. This is an interesting villain, folks, because on one hand, you're kind of disgusted by how he runs things. But if you take a step back of the environment and what they're running, I'm not going to say he's justified, but you can see where in his brain he thinks he's right in what he's doing.
Well, he set himself up as a god.
Yeah.
I mean, he set himself as like the godhead of this thing. That's why he has so many fanatics for him. He has the war boys. He has the war boys, the breeders, the imperators, or which I think I'm mispronouncing, and all that other thing. Basically, everybody right down to the hordes of starving villagers or whatever. Yeah,
We're missing limbs.
Everybody looks at him as like a god, and now he has believed. He's this guy. He's full of. He put himself up with like war medals and stuff, but he's just like this tumor-ridden like slug, and he's made himself into this god, and he's made himself believe that that in order to remain in power, not only do I have to control the water, but I have to make sure that everybody is defined only as their function. The breeders are there to breed. The imperators are there to make the supply runs. The war boys are there as cannon fodder. The blood bags are there to give transfusions to that cannon fodder, when I need them. Nobody is a person aside from, I'd say, maybe his own sons, and that's it. Everything else is property. I mean, even the people are even his heirs are property. He said flat out that to that girl. This is like what he says. He's the meanest son of a bitch that Max has come across. He's so insidious. He's so creepy. I hate him so much, and because he's just this really diabolical person. And if you notice, he's not the only person running things in charge. They've also got the people running ammunition and the people running gasoline. Now, you can just imagine that those people are also have their own stranglehold on people, and it's just this huge, giant power play with him at the head of it.
I was going to say, he's still the alpha, though. Wouldn't you say, Cole, that even Immortan Joe, even though you've got the three guys, him running the water, you got the bullet farm guys, and you got the gas boys, Immortan Joe's still kind of the alpha, even among those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Very quickly, my computer says it needs to restart for important updates in 10 minutes. So
you should be able to postpone that.
Back, But as for what you're saying, yeah, I totally agree. One thing I noticed, it's hard to improve on what Scott said because I think he's right on with all that stuff. But one thing I noticed is they mentioned Gas Town, right? They mentioned Bullet Town. right?
The Bullet Farm. Yep, Bullet Farm in Gastown.
You think Bartertown is right out there?
Oh,
You
sure.
know, this movie is pretty damn clever when you begin to think about it. But yeah, in terms of Immortan Joe, man, that character works on a lot of different levels. I mean, when they pin that vest with the war medals on it over his tumors, oh man, that's some harsh stuff. And then all the stuff with the water is so awesome right now. I mean, there's a little bit of the gasoline wars in here, but really what this movie was about to me was the water wars. And also, where are we going to grow our goddamn food? I mean, at one point, when they're trying to get out of the marsh or whatever, this girl points to the thing and she's, they're like, what is that? And the other character's like, well, that's a tree. I mean, they don't even know what a tree is. They're so detached from the natural world, and that's the world that Immortan Joe, oversees. So, I mean, he's a despicable man, but so well played. That performance is in the eyes, and the actor, I believe, is he the villain from the first film?
Yes.
Yeah, that's well, I mean, not the same character, but the same actor.
No, not the same character, but yeah. I saw that name in the credits, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
What a great job by that actor, and he must be, I mean, he must be old. I mean, I don't mean that as an insult, but it's got to be hard work to come back and put on all the makeup and.
If you get a chance, the Alamo Drafthouse has a thing on YouTube where they had you turn off your cell phone and shut up during the movie, and they had that actor sitting next to George Miller, and he was saying it as the toe cutter. Great.
Oh man!
Have a lovely day.
Gotta look at it. It's great. You'd love it, Cole.
Awesome.
Immortan Joe, he's a villain that I thought was unique that we haven't seen much in action films, because when they introduce him, you're not going to expect him to go toe-to-toe with Max, are you? What'd you think of that, and Immortan Joe in general? What'd you think of him as a villain?
I honestly didn't care about him at all. Like, the whole water thing I thought was intriguing, but everything else he did, I really didn't care for, in all honesty. And I called him Old Man Bane, just because
Old Man Bane.
Just because I figured that's how Bane's gonna be when he's old. But I didn't really buy much into his motivations. They didn't really make sense to me, and just because. I think it's because this movie just had so much action that it was hard for me to get a grasp. Like, what's his motivation? Like, why is he doing all these things? So he's a villain that I honestly really did not care for.
Oh, no, that's fine. He was going after the breeders. He wanted the babies. That was pretty much his simple motivation. Considering, the other people he had to choose from, you can see in his warped mind why he thought maybe those were the best options.
Maybe that's where Tom Hardy. Maybe that's what happened to Tom Hardy's Bane mask in between movies. He just said I don't need this anymore. Here, you can have it.
Glenn, what did you think about them making Immortan Joe kind of vulnerable in a lot of ways? Because you look at him, he's not feeling well.
Yeah, I think it fits with the whole. It fits with the story of the breeders. Is that it's more of it? It's probably not. It's not so much that his previous breeders were not of the right stock. It's that he's not.
Right.
I mean, he's definitely a character that is showing the effects of living in an irradiated wasteland. He is obviously old enough to have lived before the bombs dropped. So he was probably not too far away from where one hit. If you look at all his tumors and stuff.
He's the weak genetic link. Yeah.
Yeah, there's still obviously radiation and stuff in the area because that's all the. That's why they have the blood banks, because they need fresh blood, because they're all dying of, basically radiation poisoning.
Yeah, because Knox points out the two tumors he had.
His two mates, was it like Larry and Barry?
Larry and Barry, yeah.
So yeah, I think that his vulnerability fits with the story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's. I like the fact that he was a vulnerable character because there's so many movies you see where the bad guy is this like just this massive, pretty much like unbeatable looking, brute, and here comes the hero, 1/8 the guy's size, but still manages to beat him up and win.
Right.
And this way, I mean, and that's one of the things I love is who kills Immortan Joe.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh, and it was so
Not only does she kill Immortan Joe, but Paul, she sacrifices her arm, killing Immortan Joe.
Yeah.
So
Wouldn't you say that was an interesting, not the person you thought who would take out Immortan Joe, or did you think that she would be the one that does the deed?
I think watching the movie, it kind of led to that. I knew it was either going to be a Mad Max or her. I was glad that they did her because I knew it would set up the events of the ending, which is, again, I mentioned this earlier, it was the perfect Mad Max ending, I thought.
Right.
So, I think if he had done it, I think it would have been a very cliche action film type thing. Oh yeah, the main hero, he did something extraordinary, and throughout the entire movie, he did extraordinary things. And honestly, as much as I really did like the villain, I thought that especially when he was going to lose his actual perfect son.
Yeah.
I thought that was very touching, and I actually felt for that character. It was like, wow, he's not all that bad.
Yeah, that was a creepy, weird scene.
Yeah.
I still think he was bad.
Don, what do you think of that scene with the baby, though? Did it give you just maybe a little sympathy for Immortan Joe, or not at all?
No.
Thank you.
It really didn't.
Wow.
It just to me cemented the fact that it wasn't about life. It was about property. It was about possession.
Yes.
It was about damn, somebody damaged my property.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But it's also his legacy.
I did not feel bad for him.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with Don. I think, and I think you were just mentioned legacy and stuff, but I think it's like, I think it was his thing. That was my seed, my person and everything like that. It's, and they take the baby out, which is croaked and stuff, and
Now, on the other hand,
yeah.
I did feel bad for what the heck was his son's name?
Rictus.
Rictus, yes. I did feel bad for him because there was tragedy there. He lost his brother. He was grieving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was upset he lost his an actual brother.
And Rictus wasn't evil.
No.
Like his dad was. And this is something that is prevalent in all of the Mad Max movies, is they always have someone who in some way has some kind of mental disability.
Mm-hmm.
Because, Rictus is not, he's very simple-minded.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's also our recurring theme is you have the simple-minded brute, who very often is an instrument for the bad guy, but isn't bad himself.
Right.
It shows more. It actually makes me feel less for Immortan Joe because of the fact that here he has this, this simple-minded son, but he uses him as this, brutal machine, to enforce his will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. And then we have all the secondary characters, which there are so many in this film. It's amazing. You get all the different guys who are his war boys and such, and I loved them. But what I found interesting into the secondary characters, of course, there's Knox with Timothy Holt, and we could go on with all the characters, but I just want to touch briefly on these secondary characters, who your favorites were, or which ones kind of stood out for you. Tony, I know you didn't like the character, but the movie on the whole, but as far as those secondary characters like the pole boys and lancers and all that, were there any that kind of stood out for you that you at least kind of liked or thought were interesting?
Excuse me. Does that guitarist with the flamethrower count?
Yes, that's the one.
Then that's the character. All the other secondary characters, screw them. I like the guitarist with this.
Okay, who here didn't like the guitarist?
Devil's Advocate. I hated him. He sucked.
Yeah,
I liked the drummers better. They were much better. Pretentious.
I think I made a comment or something earlier on Facebook or something where I said like, "Hey guys, do you notice how when he wanted to get their blood pumping, he didn't put a wrapper with Pro Tools on that truck?" There's a reason for that. Rock and roll survives the apocalypse. Kanye doesn't.
Well, I read it somewhere, and it didn't even click for me until I read the article that he was doing the whole war drums thing. These were the guys that were doing the beat for, well, not marching, but for driving. They're the old Civil War drummer boy. That's basically down to their core.
Oh,
right?
like a drum and fife thing, yeah.
Yeah, wouldn't you say, Don? That is
Oh,
their
yeah.
core, and the guitar guy, you got to give respect for him.
Absolutely. Well, everybody needs some good driving music.
Oh, definitely. Besides the guitar guy, who was the doof, or I forgot what they call him, but
I thought that was the guitarist, the doof.
Yeah, the doof
warrior.
warrior.
I don't know. I get him confused. That one great thing is like looking at those end credits. I just said, look at all these fucked up names. Doof warrior, toast the knowing. Fuck yes, you crazy Australian bastard.
Don, what
I mean,
outside
not to sound dirty, but think about it. Rictus erectus.
Oh yeah, well that was totally on purpose.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The steroid muscle guy is that?
Yeah. That did.
Yep.
So outside of guitar guy, was there any other characters or minor characters that you kind of enjoyed, Don?
Oh, Nux. Hugely. I thought they did an excellent... I think if it were not... I think he was extremely well developed. Probably one of the better developed characters of the film because he changed from... He's the one person who evolved from the blind fanatic, I will die for my God, to, oh my God, there's more.
Yeah.
If I just look, I can and think I can still die and believe in what I'm dying for, but not just because I'm blindly following.
Mm-hmm.
I was very impressed with that character because he developed so fully.
Right. Well, especially, and it's what triggered his development too. His change was when he witnesses. It's Toast. I think that's the pregnant one was Toast.
No,
or
Zoe Kravitz was Toast.
Oh, Zoe Kravitz. Okay, sorry. But after seeing the pregnant breeder go under the wheels, that's the turning point for Knox's character. He's like, oh, he ran her over. He's like, wait, he reveres these ladies and he ran her over. What the heck? I mean, you can see the confusion in his head. Wouldn't you say that that's kind of the key moment where he starts to question his faith on it? Or would you say
it was definitely around that area?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think he was just horrified by the violence and everything, and he was. I think it would bring a lot of things like what she was doing to get away from this person, and
Right.
and the senseless loss and all that other stuff. And wow, what kind of position does that put me in? I'm gonna just skip ahead and say that my favorite, I agree with Dawn, so I'm not even gonna go into any more on that because I think that she just said everything perfectly. For my favorite character, absolutely was Nux.
So Knox, Paul, what about you? Outside of guitar guy, because we all love the guitar guy.
Yes.
Even the hater likes the guitar. Guy.
Even the hater likes it.
Nux and Capable together. I thought they were a great pair.
Yeah.
And also, part of the thing too was that Nux blamed himself because his failure sort of set the thing in motion which led to her falling out and
Mhm.
getting run over. I think he blamed himself slightly for the death of Joe's wife because of that. And then I think that's when Capable finds him hiding
Yes.
in the rig and feeling bad about himself, and she kind of helps him, see this other person in him and just
Right.
basically moves forward from there. That's why I think those two characters together are really great.
Mm-hmm. Glenn, what about you? Outside of the guitar guy, was Knox your favorite, or did you have a different
Probably.
one?
Well, as Paul, to add on to what Paul was saying, it's Nux, and then with Capable, it's that's probably the first like caring shoulder he's ever had to lean on. It's the first person who ever showed him affection,
Mhm.
aside from maybe Larry and Barry. So he's probably never been shown a single moment of kindness in his life, and that's all Capable does to him.
Mhm.
She is nothing. The fact that he tried to kill them. It doesn't. That's not Capable doesn't care. She sees him as a confused boy, which is what he is. He's a confused, misled boy. And as Don said, he grows the most in the film, by far. And I liked everyone else,
Sure.
but no one stood out to me as much as that character.
I think it was a surprise that they developed his character as much as he did, especially with the way the film starts out. You kind of think, oh, okay, he's going to be dead here, and we move on with the movie, and oh no, he's here for the long haul. Cole, what about you? We were just talking about secondary characters outside of the guitar guy. Who maybe stood out for you? Was it Knox, or did you have any other
It
favorites?
definitely was, and I was kind of listening as my computer restarted. Have you guys talked about the shooting star scene yet?
No, we have not.
yet.
Okay, I'd like to mention that for his character. Well, I guess it's a shooting satellite scene.
Yeah, it was a satellite. Yeah.
All of that stuff informs his growth. Just those moments of what it is to be just a normal human being. To hold a beautiful girl under the stars and see a shooting star, or see a shooting satellite, rather. It informs his growth. And right before he dies, he asks for a witness, and not because he's
That was a good.
going to some fictional god, because he's discovered love, at least as much love as he can ever know, which is a hell of a lot. It's poignant. Some people may not get it, or some people may not like it. Not that they don't get it. I understand that, but to me, the whole terrorism thing is in full play there, regardless of what you believe, and I think it's effective, regardless of what you believe. I enjoy it.
With all the odd characters that we have, wouldn't you say that the one war boy, Knox, is probably Nux is probably the most human?
Well, I think that he's the one that's given the opportunity
Yeah.
for that. He starts out fragile. That's what his thing is. Like, you can't go into war. You're barely able to stand anymore because you're so sick, and that's why he takes the Max along as the Vleg bag and stuff. But he's so fragile. But it also, that fragility almost like gives a window to his own humanity. It actually lets you believe that there might have been hope for a lot more of them, but they didn't know. But they didn't know affection. They knew the Citadel. That's it.
Sure. And so characters are wild in here. We all love the guitar guy and Nux, not Knox. I keep calling him Knox. Nux is developed more than everybody else. Getting to the guitar guy, it leads me to what I want to talk about next, which is all the practical stuff, which has been kind of the focus. They had to build this stuff. My
Holy
brain,
shit.
for myself, and I don't know if anyone else ran into this, and anyone can chime in. For me, while watching it, after I got done, I had to realize, wait, they built all those cars. It was so out there, the design. Like the the whole amp car with the drums on the back, with the guy on the front on the bungee playing the flame-throwing guitar, they built all that. And the guitar actually shot fire. That wasn't CGI. Miller wanted him to shoot fire.
I
Yeah.
want one.
Thanks, folks.
Actually, I think that whole truck worked. I think all the speakers worked. I
Yeah.
think that whole rig worked the way it worked. So,
The rig worked the way it was supposed to, and all the practical effects in here. Even though we did have the CGI, did we miss practical effects, folks? Anyone can chime in. Did this film?
Holy
God,
crap.
I love practical effects.
You know, and you forget how much we've come to depend on. I was screen grabbing. Basically, I like to use screen grabs as much as I can rather than publicity stills. Like when I'm doing when I'm posting my reviews. So I was screen grabbing the trailer and little bits from the trailer. And normally I'm like looking at the trailer and I can't, it's hard to get a good picture because stuff gets so blurry. And I'm like, why aren't these people blurry like they normally are? And I had to remember, oh yeah, it's because they're real people. They're not digitally added pixels that just like whiz around at the screen for like a split second. They're real people.
yeah, man.
That's what took it so, and it's like, oh my god, you actually forget that about the over-reliance. The friend one of the friends I mentioned that didn't like the movie actually accused the movie of being a Michael Bay film.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Ouch!
And I said,
That is-
no,
I don't think Tony would even go that far with it.
I said, no. I said, that's not a Michael Bay. I said, yeah. I said, it's not a Michael Bay film. All of this stuff was real. Those were all real cars. And he just kind of looked at me like, yeah, right. I'm like, no, it was. I swear to God. Give me a stack of Bibles. I'll swear on them. They were real. The storm was added. You know, little shots
yeah.
where you saw down a person's throat. That, of course, was added. But for the most part, and it looked so good. It was just amazing to see what they had done, and that, oh my gosh, we weren't mistaken. It actually looks better than if they did it on a computer. It actually eclipsed anything you could do on a computer.
Well, yeah, I mean, from the guys on the poles, I mean,
Oh my God.
they're guys actually on the. Glenn, what about you? Did your brain forget for a moment that? Well, wait a minute. These are all real people. This isn't like some kind of fancy special effect. These are guys actually on these poles swinging with engines on the other end.
Oh, I think I was too engaged
Mm-hmm.
with what was going on to even think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in awe of all of it. Every time I saw a vehicle, even as impractical as many of them were, I'm like, this. It just everything blew me away.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah,
I didn't even think about the effects as effects.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, because it felt so natural.
Yeah.
You got engrossed because you weren't thinking. Oh, let's just face it. I'll take the opening 15 minutes of this film over the opening 15 minutes of the Avengers film any day of the week.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's like, we just got done watching Avengers, a movie I liked, again for the record, but we opened that shot up with a continuous computer enhanced shot that we all agreed, whether we liked the movie or not, pretty much all of us agreed, yeah, it looked like a video game.
I don't know. I think the movie could have been a lot better if it had some in the opening scene. It had a slow motion shot of Max Furiosa and Nux all doing the jump.
with the flames in slow motion.
Yes.
Yeah, and for me, it made me just feel the weight. You felt weight to these vehicles. You felt danger. I think that's what it was. Using the practical effects, wouldn't you say, Paul? Using the practical effects and being real cars and that actually gave more of a sense of danger than if it would have been CGI.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the stunts just made it that much more like it felt real, and it felt more dangerous. It felt like somebody could actually make and fall off one of the things. I mean, it's like Cirque du Soleil meets Burning Man. And there was that point where even Max was on the other end of the pole, and I'm thinking, oh my God, he's gonna get,
Yeah.
But it was fantastic. It was like, I don't know, it was just exciting.
Sure.
The fact that I'm like stammering over it is proof that it was exciting enough for me to just like, wow, I can envision it all in my head.
Well, I think Don heard me take a deep breath a couple of times after the action sequences, because even the second time around, it caught my breath, and I can't remember an action scene or an action movie that throughout the entire film had me feeling like I was holding my breath.
Does it get better the second, third time through? I mean, do you pick up more things?
I will say yes, because, and Cole, maybe...
I did.
And Scott, yeah, for those who have seen multiple, I will say I did, because the first time around I was so engrossed in the action. The second time around I could focus just a little bit less on the main stuff and realize just how much crap is going on in the background that you don't see in most modern action films, because all the effects want to be in the center of the camera of happening.
Oh, yeah.
Cole, did you notice that on second and third viewing?
Oh yeah, man.
Notice more in the back. Guys are moving.
The third viewing especially, Mark. I mean, I can't wait for fourth, fifth. I mean, no, I'm serious. You guys laugh at me, but my record time for a movie is 13 times. And if it wasn't for money, I would have kept going, because a good filmmaker thinks about these things. Not that to be a good filmmaker you don't have to. But
Right.
George Miller, I mean, every shot is packed. You start focusing on, for instance, what are the young ladies' names? The slaves, the breeders.
Yeah.
You start realizing that they've all got individual outfits. At first, they all look the same, but then you start seeing individual tattoos on their fingers, and just little bits and pieces and details that, I mean, I could watch it 100 times. The whiteout when somebody gets head-butted, just like the whiteout from the Road Warrior.
Mhm.
When somebody gets head-butted, there's an instant whiteout,
Mhm.
and they solarize the screen for like maybe a quarter of a second. And that's here. I'm not crazy. You can watch watch this film, and you'll see a whiteout during a headbutt, just like in the Road Warrior. And this film is just stacked with those moments. And some people might say, that's just you as a viewer. None of that was in the scripts. But, I mean, George Miller had a long time to think about the shit.
Yeah.
A long time. I read about Tom Hardy's casting before I'd ever even seen Dark Knight, if I'm right. I might have to check my Facebook dates.
Mhm.
But it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So, this film is very interesting. I see it as like an art house movie, almost like a renegade, even like more renegade than what Rodriguez, all those guys. Like, I see this as like the true outlaw Hollywood movie, man.
Mhm.
Well, sure, 'cause
I
they ran
lost
away with all
track.
their money.
Yeah. I lost track of what the question was. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's fine. And the vehicles too, the way they were designed, yes, they were outlandish, and yes, they were souped up and odd looking. But in all honesty, if you pay attention, a lot of that was functional. I mean, it looked wild and crazy at first, but the scavenger guys, the vultures or whatever they were. The guys with the spiked cars, you realize they had spiked cars to prevent people from jumping on them.
Yeah.
You had other things going on, like there's blades and stuff on the side of the war machine, so people, if they drive up next to it, their car will get cut. There's a lot of practicality to many of the designs of those vehicles that may look weird, but it didn't feel like they were just made odd-looking to be odd-looking, maybe a little embellished, but there was also function to a lot of those parts. Wouldn't you say, Dawn?
Oh yeah, definitely. And you could see they were trying to, at least to some extent, they were kind of trying to show why certain things were there too.
Mm-hmm.
Not overtly, of course, but yeah, there was definitely function to their form.
Yeah,
There was just so much detail put in the film. They put so much detail in this movie. every single thing looks like it was like planned and pre-thought and everything, and it looked like it was done even for multiple viewings, and it looked like it was for people where, you know, if you're gonna watch this once and enjoy the action of it and everything, well, that's great. I hope you watch it more, because I didn't spend 3 years on this just for it to be an action thing. and so he put up in so much detail and with the characters and the function of everything that you're just like, geez Louise. It shows you that, you know, a lot of, you know, I'm afraid that the movie is a benchmark, and it is a sign of how people should be like looking at movies. And I'm sure it says a lot of our blockbuster films, even the ones they spend a year developing and hundreds of $millions making. You guys are being fucking lazy. In comparison to this, like, you could do better.
you could see a lot of work, and like I said, that goes all along too with the stuff on the second viewing. You watch again and you see stuff in the background, and it's amazing what little mental effect it actually has on some of the action scenes, because you realize there's that persistent feel of danger, because you've got guys jockeying in the background of it's not just happening in front of the camera. There's stuff off screen or just out of the corner where guys are moving into place to try to hop on the truck. And I loved that bit of it, you know. So these action scenes and the cinematography in this film are just phenomenal. They pulled someone out of retirement, my understanding, so that he could shoot this film.
John Seal. I was wondering why it was 5 years since his last movie.
Yeah, apparently he was going to go into retirement, and you know, and Tony even mentioned, even though he doesn't like it, you mentioned it, Tony, that you enjoyed the cinematography of this film.
Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah, it's just they used every inch of that frame, and that's part of the reason why I love the practical effects and how it was shot, and. Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on that you could talk about this film. Now, I want to talk about, just briefly, some of the nods he gave to the original without... Am I off? But most films, when they do remakes or reboots or whatever, especially to cult films, they try to do a nod like, hey, look, this is a reference to the original. Look at what we're doing. And in this one, at not one point did I feel like they did that, but at the same time,
but they did it so subtly.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. Is they still did it, but he did it subtly. Namely, for me, and it makes me laugh every time I saw it, was the shotgun.
Yeah.
When he goes to shoot Timothy Holt's arm off with the shotgun, and the shell malfunctions, it doesn't just malfunction. Paul, didn't that malfunction in the exact same way that it did in the original trilogy?
I didn't notice it. I'm sorry, but I didn't.
It did.
Gwen, what did you say?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the flare, the way it flared and everything, it was like directly out of it. I'm like, oh my God, he threw that in there. And then I noticed, if you noticed in one of the late Psych Out scenes, we even get bulgy eye scene.
Yep.
Who here caught the bulgy eye scene?
Yep.
Oh, hell yes.
You folks, for what I'm referring to, if you heard our podcast where we talk about the original trilogy, when the main bad guy, Toe Cutter, gets hit by a truck, he has this cartoon event where his eyes bulge completely out of his body. Yeah. And they actually worked that frame into here.
Yeah, Toe Cutter and Knight Rider both had got the old Tex Avery treatment there. And yeah, you saw it for a second when he's remembering all the horrible shit that he's gone through.
And how about, and even maybe, and I just thought about it while we were talking about it tonight, even the sons of Emote and Joe, he had the little guy who could have been Master, and the big guy who could have been Blaster.
Yep.
Oh, I didn't make that connection. That's a good one.
Oh, yeah.
That's killer! Good work, man! That's awesome!
Mark, you just blew my mind.
I
He
am
blows
so
everyone's
glad I did
mind.
the show. Oh.
Tony, we won't talk about that. What I do in private. No, just kidding. But yeah, I mean, there were all those certain little just nods and things that I think he threw in here subtly that wasn't I think he threw in for the fans and for himself, but it wasn't like, oh, look at this is what we're doing. He kind of worked those in there, and I loved how he did that with that film as well. I mean, as you can tell, most of us folks really enjoyed this film, and it was a breath of fresh air. And Tony, you even mentioned, even though you didn't care for the story, you will say the action scenes probably are stuff that you haven't seen in an action film in quite some time, wouldn't you say?
I say in a way. In
Yeah.
a way I would, just because of the fact that they actually built the vehicles, and and that's not to say there aren't real stunts in other films.
No.
But the stunts here were like what you guys said. They were very perilous. Like, you can actually die attempting to do stunts like that. So, despite how I feel about this movie, I do respect everything in the action process that George Miller wanted to bring on the screen.
Yeah, it is one thing that, at least across the board, even those who don't care for it, recognize the action scenes in this, and it does set a bar. And I'm fine with no more action films this year.
Yeah,
personally.
yeah, man.
So, Mark, you're fine with no Star Wars?
Huh? No.
It's not an action film.
It's not an action film. That's a sci-fi opera. That's
It's kind of a fantasy
This-
sci-fi action movie.
Well, Mad Max is kind of a sci-fi film too, Mark. You know.
It does. This is a sci-fi film as well. Yes, this is actually a good sci-fi film. Oh, one of the things that I would have mentioned. Okay, you got me.
I know you're all excited for Terminator Genesis, right?
I am.
Tony, man, I love you, man. Please don't bring that movie up.
Don't push it.
Do not bring that movie up while we're talking about Mad Max Fury Road. Please. Do
I
not
swear
bring
on
it
my
up.
own
You know,
haircut.
it's funny. I'm just thinking right now that when I saw this movie the second time, they showed trailers for Terminator Genesis and Ant-Man. I'm like, wow, this is like Mark's greatest hits.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate that.
At the theater
sorry,
tonight,
man.
Andreas.
Oh no, it's just, yeah. There's so much. Oh, one of the things I wanted to mention before we wrap it up for the night is, who caught the samurai, Seven Samurai reference? Scene
I
in
did
here.
not.
Oh, please tell me, because that's one of my favorite movies. So now I feel like an idiot.
Well, okay, it's not quite, but it had that feel, and I swear that's what he was going for. The truck stops, they pull it up, Mad Max grabs his bag and walks off into the fog. And we don't see what happens. We
Oh,
just
I
see a
caught,
bit of
I
an
caught that
explosion.
slightly. Slightly, I caught that.
There's an explosion, but you don't really hear what's going on. And all of a sudden, Max just comes trudging back. He's got a bag full of guns and blood on him. And she says that's not his blood. That's one of the few subtle humorous moments in here where it's dropped in there and the audience kind of laughs, but at the same time, it wasn't like, hey, we're making a joke. She was being
Serious.
truthful. But there was that scene in Seven Samurai where the one badass guy goes off to take out the rifleman, and we don't see what happens, and then he just comes trudging back, hands one of the guns to his buddy, and goes off and takes a nap. And this scene had that feel, the way it was directed and handled. I'm like, oh my god, please tell me he was intentionally, because
That's a good catch, man. I can't believe I didn't catch that. That's one of my favorite movies. That's a really good one, man.
because he comes back in the same way, as that other guy did, and it's handled. We don't see what happens or how he took out the bullet farm guys, but whatever he did, it had to be brutal because he got their blood all over his head.
And then he washes it off with breast milk.
That had to smell really good in the desert, let me tell you.
Oh god, the mother's milk thing. But the thing with that is, as creepy as that was, and maybe even offended some people, it almost made a little bit of sense as far as a source for liquid. Even though it was odd. Don, what would you say? I mean, even as creepy as that was, did it in some twisted way?
It made a certain amount of sense. I mean, everybody was a tool for Immortan Joe to use, and that's just one more tool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
I
you
I
had
mean,
all the
you
fat ladies
milk
being
your
milked.
you milk your cows, and you know,
And
if
you would
women
give
are
them
just
water, and then they would produce, and so you gotta
exactly.
feed water to them, and they could have been. I almost got the feel those were ex-breeders. Wouldn't you say, or were these breeders his first batch?
Mm-mm.
There
No.
wasn't,
No, not. I think the heavy set girls would be just for milking, and
Mhm.
that's why they're obviously well fed. And the model types are the ones that he's going to actually do his thing with. I can't even bring myself to
I
say
know,
it.
right?
He's
It's
such
so-
a gross dude. I can't even bring myself to say it.
Fury Road, I think we've all made our arguments and whatnot. It's an interesting film. Go see it. Go support it so we can get other films like this and they get the message that practical effects are really, really missed. in
They won't get
films.
it. They won't get it.
But also, you can write a strong female character without, one, her losing the fact that she's still a woman, but at the same time, you don't have to make her a romantic interest or any weaker than the other characters or the other male characters. She's just a character, as Dawn said. Not male or female. Just write a strong character, and if you cast a female as it, that's fine, but just write the strong character. Give me that strong character. I mean, let's close it out here. Just our favorite moment, or even we would start with Tony. Even though you didn't like it, did you have a favorite moment, like one moment that really stood out for you that you really were like, okay, I don't quite like this, but man, that was pretty damn cool.
Even though it was losing its steam by the end, and I was kind of like, oh, just end already. I would say the finale, just because I felt like the stunts were a bit more crazier and a little more out there than the other action pieces. No, actually, no, that's not true. Even though I felt like the first action scene was really disjointed, and I thought the pacing felt very off, I would say with that big tornado actually stuck out for me, like, wow. Even though the scene felt disjointed to me, I actually liked the whole tornado thing and how everything was spinning around. So to me, I would say it's a tie between the opening action piece and the finale action piece.
Awesome. And Scott, what about you? Any particular scene that really stood out that would be, like, out of all yours, like the favorite?
Oh my God.
So much, but if you had to pick one of them, which one would you say that stood out? When you say Mad Max Fury Road, what sticks out for you, as far as the scene goes?
Honestly, I'm stumped. For the once, I'm stumped.
You're stumped, okay.
Honestly, I don't think I could. I mean, there was so much that I loved. I mean, you can go
Sure.
into all the action sequences. I could talk about this cool thing in the action sequence, that cool thing in the action sequence, and yet there are so many like little tender moments and stuff. I don't know. I'm not gonna say that this is like a moment that I like. This is the moment I remember. This is the moment I loved. But simply because I can't think of anywhere else to mention it. Do you remember how when we were talking about the original Mad Max trilogy for our previous episode, guys? Check it out. It's awesome. One of you guys was mentioning how the aerial effects in Road Warrior.
Mm-hmm.
The aerial
It
things.
makes sense, yeah.
There is an aerial shot of a Morton Joe's war party. And you can hear the music coming up again, the guitar music, and you're like, okay, here we go. And then it fades away, and you're like, why did it fade away? Oh, because the camera passed over him. that you actually heard the guitar start up and then go in the distance. I actually chuckled at I mean, it's not the big part I'm going to remember, but I chuckled at that. I thought, man, only in this movie.
Paul, what about you? One moment or a scene that kind of stands out for you among the others?
Howard the Duck in the end credits. Oh wait, that was the other movie.
That
was the other
You saw the wrong movie.
Wrong movie.
Yes. No, I've mentioned this throughout the entire podcast. It's the ending, the perfect ending of a Max story. Is when you expect everything. You expect him on the platform. It's rising up. and you see him in the crowd walking away. Beautiful. That was like, if it would have ended any other way, as good as the rest of the movie was, I would have hated the movie.
Uh-huh.
Seriously.
Sure.
And because of that ending, it was like, yes, this is a Mad Max film. He is meant to be a loner. He is meant to be out in the wasteland. He had many, many opportunities in other movies to be elevated to this hero, but he's the loner. He's the guy that continues on, and the story follows him, and that's what I liked.
I kind of did want to shake him though at that point. It's like, how many times are you gonna walk away from a good thing? You're so frustrating, Max. Honestly.
Like,
Glenn,
He's got to deal with his ghosts first.
Yes, he does.
Oh, ghost most.
Glenn, what about you? Any favorite moment outside of all of them, or?
Actually, my favorite moment is when I get to see the Interceptor. As soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, lots of the V8s. That's for me right there. I'm like, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I'm in Mad Max world. Doesn't matter what happens now.
Nice. And Dawn, what about you?
Okay, it's not the dream moment, but I'm sorry. I just keep thinking about this scene and just giggling. It's when he's using the file to try to get the mask off his head. And he's just...
Oh, yeah.
That's, again, that subtle humor to where it's purpose, but at the same time it's just humorous because he'd kill some guy and then start doing that again.
It's such an undignified thing for him to do. He's like, oh, God.
And
Like a dog with one of those collar things, those
exactly. And he just completely carries on with it on. I mean, he might as well be naked and carrying on the same way. He just does what he needs to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that part. That was one of those subtle, humorous parts where, and at one point he stops. He's got it sticking outside the back of his head. He's talking to people, and it's just sitting back there, like.
Yep.
It's like, yeah. Oh, I love the file scene, definitely. Cole, what about you, sir? Out of all the scenes, if you could pick one, maybe of one of your favorites, what would you say?
Well, I mean, I mentioned the water fight, I guess you'd call it earlier.
Right.
I think is fantastic. Dawn stole my other favorite moment. But, I mean, really, that's a terrific moment. But just as an extension of that, the whole notion of keeping your character in like a postmodern Silence of the Lambs mask for like a third of your film, and having it be Mad Max just adds this notion of he's pissed.
Well, he's swearing. He's swearing when he's on the front of the car. If you pick it up, it's just faint, but you can hear him talking about first my fucking car and now my fucking blood.
But also, as like an ultimate extension of that, just one final nod to Tom Hardy, who, I mean, this is Tom Hardy's Mad Max.
Yeah.
It really is,
Yes.
man. I noticed that tonight watching it. I really feel like this is a new character, and I love this character. It's not removed from the world. I love what Mel Gibson did, and it will always exist.
Mhm.
But this character kicks ass.
Sure.
And I hope, if we don't get another film, fine. But I would like to see him do it at least once more,
Yeah, he definitely got into the role, and even though apparently there was some behind-the-scenes stuff, problems he had with Miller because it took so long and all the reshoots and that, you can't tell on screen. He owns this part, and he makes it his own without overshadowing, I think, Mel Gibson at all. He just makes it his own Max without disrespecting the original Max at all.
Yeah.
For me, there's so many great moments as well. I will say this: it's the opening scene, and it's where we see the Interceptor. But I'm going to go a little further with Glenn. I don't think people notice it at first, but did you notice how the car flips, it spins, and it slides to the camera, and that's all one shot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is no cutaway. You get in the distance, the car's driving and chasing him. His car flips and slides, and as it slides, it stops in front of the camera, and he crawls out, and that's all cut as one scene.
Yes,
And
sir.
I loved that because it's so subtle at first. I didn't really fully catch it until the second time around. I'm like, oh, holy crap, that's just one shot. We never leave that shot. His car comes sliding to the camera. And I'm like, wow. It's stuff like that that's just so well thought out, I think, in this film. And the other moment for me, I actually will say, is the moment where I thought the film was going to be disappointing. And it's the scene where they come up and they see the girl trapped in the electrical tower. And
Oh, yeah.
he stops and he goes, no, wait, it's bait. And the girl is naked, and that's not why it's my favorite scene. But the woman is naked, and she's crying, and I'm like, great, we've had fairly strong female characters up to this point, and now we've got a damsel in distress. And then we find out, no, she is bait, but she's part of the bait. She's in on it. And so
Yeah.
she cheers out, and then come the old ladies on the motorbikes, which I loved this group of women. These ladies were just hilarious. They're checking over the breeders going, hey, this one's got all her teeth.
And the bait herself, as you get closer to her, is not some young, glamorous woman.
No,
I mean,
no.
they chose her for specific reasons, it's because at afar she looked like bait.
Yeah.
Then you get closer and you see she's sand-worn and, beautiful, a beautiful woman, but...
Well, but they're all almost like war torn. These are all battle hardened ladies. These are all ones you don't want to tick off. I mean, the one talking about, yep, headshots, every one of them.
I've killed everyone I've met out here.
Yeah, and that's
I think.
that's probably my other favorite moment with it. I mean, I got a lot of favorites, but one that really stood out because then you have the breeder girls, and some of them seem to want to be like these ladies. They want to be that. They want to learn more about them because they're fascinated. They're like, almost like they want to be them. And I just love that whole moment. So yes, folks, we've sit here and gushed for a good hour and a half or so, 2 hours here about this film. And even though some people may not have cared for it, they still respect what went into making this film. So Fury Road, go see it if you haven't. Give it some support. I'd love to see a sequel and see George Miller at least one more time visit this world and see what he can do with it. And
Mad Max Wasteland.
Yep, Mad Max the Wasteland. It's supposedly
Can't wait
its
for it.
title. Real quick, just one more thing because I want to get Tony's opinion. Tony, would you though say, even though you didn't care for how the film was, would you like to see more practical effects in your action films? from seeing what they did in Mad Max.
Of course. I have a different mindset. I appreciate both practical and CGI just because I know it takes hard work either way. But yeah, I mean, if they have the tool to do it, and if they really want to get creative with it, then yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing more practical effects in the movies.
Cool. Yeah, because I kind of feel the rest of the group what they would say if you say, "Oh, do you want to see more practical effects?" And I think we'd all say yes. So
yeah, well, I mean, it's like but Tony's right. I mean, I think in that Space Hunter episode I did so long ago, I think I do a thing on practical effects, and I'd say CGI is fine. It's a means to an end, and there's a lot of movies where it's been used very well. But I think that we have gone too far to rely on it, and I think that this is a reminder that we don't necessarily need to, and sometimes it might not be as it's always hard work, as Tony says. It might not be as easy to do or as, but it's sometimes looks better to do it the old-fashioned way.
What about anyone else want to weigh in? Do you think this set the bar and we're going to maybe see more practical effects? I mean, not only this, but Star Wars is doing more practical as well.
Yeah. Well, has anybody mentioned the Max pulling himself out of the sand shot? Does anybody remember that?
Too. Oh, yeah.
I mean, that is how amazing this movie is that even your character pulling himself out of the goddamn sand is something you've never quite seen before, and I'm assuming they didn't use a whole lot of CG for that shot. I can't speak for George Miller, but I totally agree, man. This film is so inspiring in its use of not only practical effects but just practical filmmaking.
Mhm.
The notion that you can make a movie like practically, without all these bells and whistles that give you a cartoonish vibe that will not hold up. Believe me, it won't hold up. The Fly holds up better than Starship Troopers. I guarantee it. Your effects are not going to hold up, man. The more practical, the better. And I just make that connection because of the insects. It's a stupid comparison, but whatever.
This movie will definitely make me a little more pissed off the next time I see a filmmaker, whether they be an independent filmmaker or a blockbuster filmmaker, you do CGI blood in a movie. This will definitely make me a little more pissed off. Definitely next time I see that.
Glenn, Paul, or Don, anything to add about practical effects or?
Practical effects are always better.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we all feel that way. So let's go down real quick then, and everybody, you got your chance here where you can pimp your stuff. Let our fans know, those who have listened to this fantastic podcast tonight, know where they can find your other stuff. Cole, go ahead first, sir.
Facebook, Cole Meredith, if you want to talk movies. Shadows and Lovers Productions, if you want to see what I'm up to in terms of my own personal movies, of which there's a lot on the horizon. And Horror, if you want to see the geeky fanboy side of my art. Horror, just lots of geeky fanboy horror stuff. But please see Mad Max Fury Road, because it would be nice for another installment.
It definitely would, and it didn't do that bad at the box office for an R-rated action film in these modern times. 40 mil domestically is nothing to sneeze at for an R-rated action film.
It did. For all people complained about the Pitch Perfect 2 thing, which was always going to win, it did very well.
For today's film movie box office, yes, I'd say it did. And we're gonna go out of. Oh, go ahead.
I'll just say one quick thing. Tonight was the most full theater I've been in for the third time, and it was Monday night, so I'd like to assume word of mouth is catching on.
It's going to be word of mouth, and I really think this is going to be another one of those live, die, repeat experiences where that film, when it first came out, wasn't a big blockbuster, but it hung around in theaters forever because more and more people kept seeing it because of word of mouth. So, Tony, we're going to go out of order here. Tony, why don't you tell people where they can find your stuff at, sir?
You could find me at youtube.com/22tigerdude. That's where I'll do all my movie reviews and et cetera on the channel. You could follow me at facebook.com/22tigerdude. That's where I'll give you my updates on my channel, and I get to interact with you guys more from there. You could follow me at my Twitter at twitter.com/tigerdude22, and then you can follow me on Instagram at 22tigerdude, where you actually see me post a before and after picture of my haircut.
I truly dig that. I truly dig that haircut too, Tony. And speaking of haircuts, Mr. Paul got one as well. Paul, where can they find you at?
They can find me in the green place, actually. Actually, ForsakenFilmReviews.wordpress.com.
So is that what you nicknamed your bathroom?
Sorry. It's my car. It's my car.
Dawn, what about you? Where can they find you at?
You can find me at intheaudience.net.
Fantastic. And Glenn?
You can find me on YouTube, Beam Bunker at Naked Hobo Productions, on Facebook, Naked Hobo Productions, and follow me on Twitter at Naked Hobo.
Fantastic. And finally, Mr. Scott Davis, go, sir.
You can catch me at movieocrity.com. That's MOVIOCRITY. I had to think about it for a second. TY.com. And that's where you're going to find I have these long analytical film reviews with a little bit of humor, hopefully. I don't know. All the podcasts people are dumb enough to have me on, they're on that, including this one. All the episodes of my web series, which hopefully will have new episodes coming very soon. That's on there. And if you want to check out any of those things of the web series, you can check out the show. It's called Movieocrity. It's on Vimeo. That's where all the episodes are. Otherwise, if you want to see the ones that YouTube didn't take down. I'm on YouTube, and bastards, and they and yeah, I'm on the Facebook and the Twitter too. You know, my name's Scott Davis. The site is Movieocrity. You can probably figure the rest out.
Awesome. Well,
This
thank
is
you.
the stud that hated Mad Max Fury Road. Fuck this guy.
And you can find all these fine people and myself on SpecialMarkProductions.com, where we have all the archives of the Spoiler Room, the ones that we did way back when we first started the video hangouts, and we are also on iTunes as well, the Spoiler Room. Search for us there if you haven't already. If you are on there, please rate us, like us, share it with your friends as well, because it helps move us up in the iTunes land. Speaking of as well, I got to plug really quick. Go to podcastland.net. Search for the Spoiler Room in the TV and movie section, and vote for us, please, because they do a voting every month, and they feature a podcast with the most votes at the end of the month, and we're actually in the top 6 right now.
Wow!
So thank you so much, everyone.
Nice to be on a winning team. Thank you.
It is. So, thank you for your support on this. Hope you enjoyed this show. Make sure you check out our long, epic 3-part podcast where we covered the original trilogy, and make sure you check out next week, where soon our next episode will be another 25th anniversary episode, which is definitely going to be interesting for I Come in Peace and Police. Yeah, nice. I Come in Peace, and I believe it's class of 1999. So thank you so much for listening in. We are creeping up on episode 50 of the Spoiler Room, and I wouldn't be doing these so many if it wasn't for this fine group of individuals and those others in the past that have been on this show, because with the Spoiler Room, the conversation is fresh, though we do spoil the films.